If you want to improve sport performance or just build functional strength and a resilient body, then watch this video because I'm going to walk you through 4 exercises that I love to use that work the diagonal, stabilization, and activation pattern that are challenging and fun. Coach E here from Precision Movement, and today I'm going to walk you through 4 exercises that I love to use to introduce to athletes and those who have progressed beyond painful issues and want to get into exercises and routines that build their strength and resilience and performance. So these 4 exercises, they work something I call the diagonal stabilization pattern, both in the front and in the back of the body. And this is something that Tom Myers of Anatomy Train's fame talks about when he talks about the diagonal line. And this is where the body is connected in all these different lines in different patterns, straight up and down, on the front, on the back, and also in this diagonal pattern starting from the opposite leg, across the torso, going to the opposite shoulder. So these patterns are really good for sport performance. If you play tennis and you're hitting a forehand, you're using this front diagonal line. If you're hitting the backhand, you're using the back diagonal line. So they're really functional patterns that can be used. But what I find is missing in a lot of cueing when it comes to the exercises is that specific points along that line can be passive, where the muscles aren't active and you're just hanging off of, it could be the ligaments or the tendons of that area of the body. And when you do that, you introduce an area in that entire functional line that is not stable. So that's something that I'm going to cue you on throughout the exercises, but especially in the last 2 exercises of this little routine here. First, we're going to start off with pure stabilization, where you're not moving. And to do that, we're going to start off with the Superman plank exercise. And this is a challenging exercise that works the front diagonal stabilization, so from the feet, but really focusing on from the hips to the opposite shoulder. Start off in a push-up type position, but a little wider. You want your feet to be a little wider and your hands to be a little wider. Make sure you're in good neutral spine, so pulling the chin in. Your shoulders are active, your shoulder blades are active, and you're not hiking your shoulders into your ears here. So once you're in position, what you do is you lift one foot up just off the ground, and then without shifting your body weight, lift the opposite arm up and hold for 5 seconds while breathing naturally. And I like to hold the arm up at 45 degrees to get a little more lower trap activation. We'll switch sides each time. You might have to adjust the width depending on how strong you are. So lift the foot up first, get nice and stable, and then lift the opposite arm without shifting your weight too much to either side. Breathing, and then place down under control. That's the Superman plank. Keys there are to make sure that you don't shift the body, you don't lose your neutral spine, and you're able to breathe naturally. And that exercise, when you try it out, you'll feel probably the first time your body will want to shift right over to the arm, so it's not as hard to stabilize through the shoulder and the core. So that's working the front diagonal line there. Next up, we're going to do another exercise stability-wise to work the back diagonal line. And for this, we need a stability ball. And first thing I'd like to say is apologize for the crotch shot you're going to get here, at least on the main camera. So you're going to sit on the ball, and then you roll down so that your shoulders are on the ball and your head is just kind of resting on the ball lightly. Keep your hips up. And from here, you're going to step out to the side without rotating your body. And then you go onto one shoulder, and then keeping your hips level, don't let the pelvis drop. Hips are level, holding there for 5 seconds. And then you step out to the other side under control, and you hold that for 5 seconds. Keep your chin tucked in. It has a tendency to jut forward, breathing naturally when you're holding. And you repeat back and forth, side to side, until you're done the set. Key points there are your pelvis is going to want to drop. So make sure your pelvis stays level. And when you're walking out, you're not just walking your feet out and keeping your head in one place. You're walking your whole body laterally out to the side and then your whole body out, laterally out to the other side. As always, when you're holding stability exercises like this, planks, you're breathing naturally, you're not holding your breath. So these two exercises combined, working the front and the back diagonal lines, you're connecting the hip flexors to the shoulders with the Superman plank, and then you're connecting the glutes to the opposite shoulder with the stability ball lateral roll. That is going to cinch your body up nice and tight and stabilize this core in that diagonal pattern and work all of these muscles on the front and the back that are helpful not only for performance, but also for just keeping your spine in good condition. After we've done the stability exercises, we're going to move to the more dynamic functional movements. With the stability exercises, we've learned to wake up what could have been some dormant muscles or worked a pattern that you're not used to working. And those exercises are a great way to ensure that your body is in the right position and posture and has those muscles working before you get to exercises like we're going to go through now, which involve more movement. And if you don't have the good activation before, you're not going to get it in an exercise where movement is involved and there's more moving parts. It's just not going to happen. So the exercise we're going to go through now require a resistance band, like so, or it could be a cable stack on a functional trainer, and you want to set it down low, so as low as you can go. The first exercise is the wood chop, and this is going to work the diagonal pattern from opposite hip here up to the shoulder, and also gets movement going through the lower body and through the upper body. So here we want to take a nice wide stance, keeping the knees bent and feet pointing straight ahead. You're going to bring your weight over to one side, the side closest to the cable, and you've got your far hand on first, the hand that's farthest from the cable. So from here, what I want to do is I want to initiate the movement from my lower body. So I'm going to initiate the movement by pushing myself sideways, and then I'm going to bring the cable up and across, mostly with my other arm, with my far arm, okay, the arm that I put on first there. Hold it up there briefly, keeping good posture. I'm not leaning like this. My spine is straight up and down, and then I bring it back under control. So again, it's great to initiate this exercise with the lower body first, because when we do sport performance techniques, we want to get those lower body muscles working first so that the force travels through the kinetic chain appropriately. So I'm going to drive off the leg, push myself sideways, then bring the cable up, mostly with the hand that's farthest from the cable, and back down. Notice I'm not going up and down, but I'm keeping my head at the same level. I'm driving across, and then bring the arms up and over. So that there is the wood chop. You do all the reps on one side, then you go and do the reps on the other side. The last exercise we're going to do is going to work more the back line. So the wood chop worked more the front diagonal line. This exercise, the one arm low row, is going to work more the back diagonal line. So here, I've got my left hand gripping the cable. I've got my right foot forward. And I want to make sure that my foot is flat and my foot is pointing straight ahead, and my thigh is pointing straight ahead. I don't have this kind of setup. I've got this setup. So the front foot stays flat the whole time. The back foot is up on the toes, and I'm leaning forward into the hips here. So right away I could feel my hips working, my glutes working, and from there I maintain good posture, and I can get a little rotation of the body as I row, keeping the shoulder down, pulling the shoulders right back. I'm just here, rowing, keeping the foot flat and the thigh pointing straight ahead. I like to keep my head pointing at the cable, at the anchor point there, as opposed to rotating my head like this. Because again, I play a lot of tennis, I play hockey. Both those sports require you to rotate your torso while keeping your head centered. So that's the one arm low row. And what you'll find when you do that is your glutes will be burning like crazy. And if you're using an appropriate cable or weight, then your shoulders are going to be working in through the back. So glutes across up to the opposite lats, and shoulders and arm. So those 4 exercises combined are a great way to work this diagonal pattern and really get a lot of different muscles working in these patterns that you might not do all the time in the gym, but are really useful for everyday life and sport. Now, in the start of this video, I mentioned something where a lot of times people will just hang out and they'll be passive somewhere along the line. So, for example, with the wood chop, when you're doing that exercise, people will often push themselves up and lean over. I mentioned that cue. This allows you to be passive through the hips here, and we're not getting that good activation of the muscles that we need for a fully stable pattern. In these diagonal patterns, there's a lot of muscles along the chain. If some of them aren't working well, those are the weak links that are going to break, that you don't have good stability and power. In the one arm low row, here, what happens is, I'll show this side, people often drive the hips forward so you get a stretch through the hip flexor here, as opposed to keeping the hip in neutral and working the glute and the hip flexor to stabilize the hip on this side. So if you're like this, I could be hanging out on the joint capsule or the hip flexor muscles passively. That's a weak link. We don't want passive muscles in these stabilization patterns. We need activity in the muscles to create optimal stability. When we hang out passively on tissues, you get tissue creep. Tissues get weaker as opposed to stronger and less stable in through that joint or whatever area is not being stabilized through active contraction. So those are a couple of areas where you want to pay attention to during the wood chop and the one arm low row to ensure that you've got a good stabilization pattern happening. To summarize the exercises we went through, we started with the Superman plank. Do 2 to 3 sets, 2 to 3 reps per side, holding each rep for 5 seconds. Then we did the stability ball lateral roll. Do the same thing, 2 to 3 sets of 2 to 3 reps per side, holding for 5 seconds. Next, we went to the wood chop. Do 2 to 3 sets of 6 to 8 reps per side. And we finished off with the one arm low row. Again, do 2 to 3 sets of 6 to 8 reps per side. You can perform this routine 2 to 3 times a week, and you can do it for 4 to 6 weeks. So that's something a little bit different here on the Precision Movement channel, but it is along the lines of maintaining a healthy body and being able to move freely and without pain for the long term. It's not just getting out of pain, but building our bodies up so that we can prevent issues from happening in the first place. If you like that, let me know, or if you have any comments or questions, drop them down below. And I've got a couple other videos also along these lines that are more for healthy bodies to increase their performance and resilience. And if you're interested in a program that includes exercises and concepts like this to build strength, performance, resilience with unique exercises, check out the Strong for Life program, which can be found inside the ROM Coach app. As always, thanks for being here with me. See you next time. Peace.